Welcome to Weekend Wednesday, where we are going to whop ourselves into action, healthy, wealthy, on purpose. I am Unstoppable Tracy with an MBA in Change Management, Organizational Development, and so sharing in week 4 of 4 on this Change Management series. The challenge of change is it permeates our personal and our professional lives. In the past, change was kind of episodic, and now it's constant. And some change is beyond our control, and sometimes change is so quick. We've got to be part of it quickly, and it's part of everybody's reality. And in life, how we get that information is changing due to technology even. So the triangle, the delta symbol, symbolizes change. And it also summarizes achieved global international research on change leadership, which uncovered 3 hallmarks of outstanding change leaders. The first bullet, leaders activate capability. They unlock the potential to people to accept, support, and even drive changes. And the second bullet, leaders who communicate for results, inspire commitment, and maintain that forward momentum. The third bullet, leaders monitor mechanics and mood and focus people on what matters most. Measurable results and the morale of people involved. So that's series 1 through 4 under each of these 3 hallmarks. And we learned a few high priority practices and some critical ways on how to situate it and help us increase our change capability. Consistent application of these 3 practices makes a difference between change that produces results and change that don't. So week 1, we discussed half-truths about change, and we came up with these 3 hallmarks that address these 3 half-truths. Week 2, we discussed activating change capability with 4 practices. The first practice for capability is expanding awareness of business realities by getting people a visceral experience of the force is driving change. The second practice, activating capability, you spotlight the strengths and the successes, particularly of your innovators and your early adopters, to give everyone a clear picture on the positive impact of change. And the third practice of activating capability, you embrace experimentation by helping people learn from results, especially the unexpected results, and you use what they learn to move change forward. And finally, the fourth practice of activating capability as you encourage meaningful involvement by leveraging the unique talents of every individual. So week 3 to 4, we then looked at communicating for results. We looked at the challenges you face when communicating for change and how this second hallmark, communicating for results, can help us address those challenges. I'm sure you know that effective communication is like oxygen for the change effort. So what a lot of us find challenging and communicating about change challenging is making sure the changes are heard and sending the same message many times and finding communication tools that work for employees. And so when you're communicating for results, 2 practices for communicating about change. 1, provide information others need, including their heart. That's not just the facts. And the second practice is to encourage candid feedback. What are they honestly feeling about this process? Together, these practices foster 2-way dialogue that keeps change moving forward when communicating for results. So in these 2 practices, we need to communicate many different ways for many different souls, and we need to communicate many times because not everybody's hearing it the first time. So that's a recap on the first 3 weeks of change. Today, we're discussing monitoring mechanics and mood. And one key difference when you apply these practices for each of these hallmarks is when you activate capability and when you communicate for results, both of those are before and during implementation of change. In contrast to monitor mechanics and mood, it's only during implementation to keep people on course and engaged. So we looked at the half-truths about change in week 1. And we talked about how a detailed plan guarantees the success of change. That was a half-truth. The other half of that truth is what happens once the plan is implemented is what really counts. If there's no time or no resources to implement this detailed plan, then people can get frustrated and disengaged, and the plan quickly becomes out of date. So we need to modify as we follow through on the plan. That's what makes the difference. It's important, as it is a sound plan is only part of a successful change when there's an additional skillful leader staying in touch with people and their activities and adjusting this detailed plan and removing the barriers throughout the change effort. Active change leaders monitor the mechanics and the mood, and they make the progress clear to all, and they coordinate resources, and they revisit systems, practices, policies, and they respond to resistance. So tracking the progress and sharing those key indicators is a central practice in monitoring mechanics and promoting progress and monitoring and coordinating those resources to people what they need to make the progress. What do they need? And monitor those changes by the existing systems and practices. Is there a disconnect with what's going on now and what they are? Is there a hindering in these practices? When you're monitoring mechanics and mood, you monitor for resistance as well as a possibility of how you can contribute to the progress. That's the mood part. Some people find problem areas. You might find there's no updates or a lack of communication, or unclear measures of success, or lack of key equipment, or poor morale, or absenteeism, or overtime, or people reverting to old ways. So how could rapid check-in reviews help at this point? Well, family or employees canceling meetings is a sign that the change and the other person's input is unimportant. And rapid review conversations, they could convey that this is mission critical. So if you continue to have these, and you allow people, especially home-based reps, to voice their concern and stay informed and solve problems. As leaders become more aware of the reasons for increased overtime and complaint calls, or parents or partners, what are the increased complaints about? So if you don't keep your family or your teams informed, they can't prioritize their efforts. Or if they're taking too long at something to help out in the house or to complete a task, or maybe there's a kid and the resources are missing there, and they don't know how to make the bed the way you like. Is there a tool you can share to help? Can you unload workload? Can you identify something that's low value to work to free up time? And is there a tracker or a way to figure out conflicting policies, procedures, household rules, or routines, and establish some kind of rewards and recognition to reinforce some of those desired new behaviors? So above are some of the helpful ways for the mechanics of being monitored. So when you're monitoring mood or responding to some resistance, some signs of resistance, you might actively be seeing is they're actively obstructing things, or maybe there's passive resistance, or maybe there's rumors, or maybe there's gossiping, or maybe there's complaining or blaming or accusing or just refusing to take action. These are some of the business things you might see on a human level. On a family level, or human level, you might see unusually quiet or sullen, stalling or procrastinating, late or absent or grumbling or compliant, or withholding information, or reduced productivity, or saying one thing and doing another. So resistance can be frustrating, especially if you feel like you've taken positive action to address it. I refer back to the half-truth. Some people won't be able to change. Might be what you're feeling. That's only a half-truth. If we consider resistance, a changing point of view of resistance often stems from a perceived risk. Change's acceptance is an individual choice. Leaders can create conditions that facilitate change management, change commitment. People act a new way for a new way of thinking. So these sort of 4 ways, they're particularly interesting to put your aim around responding to resistance, because they can help us take action rather than taking on too much ourselves. They can help us take things less personally, because acceptance of change is an individual choice. And they can help you adopt more constructive frame of reference. They can help you spend more time coaching and less time telling people what you think or telling people what to do. In reference to resistance stemming from perceived risk, balancing that perceived risk, sometimes it helps to think of resistance as the result of the risk that the individual perceives. in change. It's sort of another way of saying it. The person is afraid, not just stubborn, for example. Or you can do something to reduce the perception of risk. You may feel more empathy for that person. You may not get as frustrated with that person. You may begin to see through the other person's eyes. So we have all, no doubt, made some false assumptions about how the other person perceives a risk. I think of arguments between loved ones that I've been hearing about. And it feels like they just don't want to do their share of the work in the house, for example. Between kids, the older kid feels like the younger one just doesn't want to do it. And it turns out one is just afraid of not doing it perfectly because everybody, all the adults in the house, they're always judging it's not good enough. So if they do a half attempt consciously, at least it's not eating their soul so much because they knew that they didn't give it full effort. So it's hard to do full effort and then get judged poorly at work or between kids or from the parents. So before you decide on your next steps with these individuals at work or your kids, it's essential to learn more about how they actually perceive the risk. If you consistently encourage candid feedback, that task will be easier. Invite to share concerns, acknowledge frustrations, directly ask for support, and facilitate action to alleviate concerns. In this series, you've seen the value of change capability to your organization, to your teams, to yourselves, to your families. You've seen how daily practices can support your success in activating capability. And you learn to tap the potential and everyone to contribute to change. And you communicate for results. You learn to share information and promote positive dialogue about change. And in monitoring mechanics and mood, you learn to keep the change on course toward the desired outcome. I encourage you to apply these 3 practices and the tools along the way as soon as possible, and you'll see immediate return for your efforts. Thank you for your hard work, and congratulations on compelling and completing this 4-part series. I enjoyed working with you, and I wish you great success at building change and capability. Please subscribe to Wealthy Healthy on Purpose for this We Can Wednesday, as well as Unstoppable Tracy. And this 4-part series is also on YouTube under Unstoppable Tracy.